So welcome back to the podcast. You know, I'm Dr. Abby Medcalf. If you don't by now, I'm not sure how to help you. And if you're watching on YouTube right now, you're very excited because you're also looking at the amazing Tess Brigham, who I'm so excited to have on. Hi, Tess. Welcome.
Hi. Hello.
So, I've known Tess for many years, as I mentioned in the intro. And as you also know, I don't just like have my friends on the podcast. You've been listening, we're over 240 episodes in, finishing up the 5th season. I do not give you bullshit. I don't just go, oh, here's my best friend. Let's have her on the podcast and figure it out. But Tess is a good friend of mine because she's so friggin' brilliant. And her work is always impeccable. I send so many clients to her every chance I get when I know that they're the right fit for her, because it's so rare to have someone who has the counseling background, is a licensed therapist and a certified coach. Like, that is a beautiful combo. So I just want to be clear that I'm having her on because she has so much to offer. And I do these extra special, I feel like it's a PBS after school special. Like it's a very special episode of Blossom. Yeah, it's a very special episode of Blossom that I am having Tess on. So her book, True You, a step-by-step guide to conquering a quarter life crisis. And I'm holding it up. She's holding it up. It's so beautiful. So if you're watching us, you see it. If not, you're just listening going, what the hell? But we're going to take you through it all. And, I highly recommend the book. It's great. I recommend it to my clients again. And that's why I'm doing this special episode. I've had a lot of you write in feeling stuck. You are really in the wheelhouse of what Tess teaches so well. And so I wanted to give the love, and here I have an expert that I know, so why not do it? So we're going to start. So, this is conquering your quarter life crisis. So, but we're going to start first with really talking about the different, like, who's in a quarter life crisis? So Tess, tell me, so we got boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z. I have some of the dates written down. I had to go look them up because I'm like, who is everybody anymore? But give me what you know.
Who's who? I mean, what I know, and I get this question a lot, like, who am I? Where do I fall into all of this? And people do get very mad too, because they don't like to be labeled as a particular generation. And I will say that all of these generations and how they were labeled, this was all done by advertising. Advertisers created all of this. So this isn't
science.
Take it with a grain of salt, right? But the idea of this is this, it's important to understand the generations, because a lot of it is about when you're born and when you came of age is important, because the events that are surrounding you when you came of age does influence how you see the world. I mean, I myself am a Generation Xer, and when I meet other people that are around my age, the way we see the world, how we interact, how we parent our children, how we how we react to things, it is very similar. So there is something about that. So really quickly, boomers are, as we know, were born right after the right after World War II into, I think, I want to say 65 into 80
is the cutoff.
65 into 80 is Generation X. 80 into the late 90s is the millennials. Gen Z is late 90s into I want to say Gen Z cutoff is,
it's like 2012.
I
looked it up because I had.
You looked it up. Okay, sorry, I don't have it right in front of me.
You and I are parenting Gen Zs.
Yes, we're parenting the Gen Zs. So right now, what's really happened is that, right, so millennials right now, we have the older millennials have turned 40.
Yeah.
So we've got millennials right now that are, right, the youngest millennials are in their late 20s, mid to late 20s, and some are 40s. So a lot of millennials now are, having children, married, having children, doing all of that. Gen Zers now some are like, our kids are in high school, college, some are in the workforce.
Yep.
You know, the pandemic really, if anyone listens to me, I will say the pandemic greatly affected Gen Zers more than
Yeah,
anyone else.
I agree.
They were greatly affected by this.
Wholeheartedly agree.
But, you know, one thing that I talk about in my book that I felt like was very, very important for people to hear is that what it's like to be a young adult in the world today is so radically different. And I think older generations needed to hear it, younger generations needed to hear it, because what, you know, the development of young people today is so different than what it was when I was young, what it was like when my parents were young, because that our world is so different. What it's like to, you know, what it's like to go through school is so different. What it's like to, you know, it's so much harder to just, you know, you know, we see this now with people struggling to pay off student loans, what
Yep.
it's like to buy a home, what it's like to establish yourself at a company, and, you know,
Right.
what it's even retirement, you know, some of these things, some of this sort of quote unquote, the American dream
Mhm,
that was once promised to people, that
mhm.
was promised is no longer a promise. There's some stats out there about how, you know, once upon a time in 1950, if you, you know, in 1950, you had a 90% chance of out earning and building a better life than your parents.
Yeah.
By 19, I want to say by the year 2000, you had a 50% chance of
Wow.
building a better life than your parents. And I mean, who knows what the stat is today?
Right.
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 So that's the
Lower
thing.
though.
Yeah, that's what's happening now, right?
Yeah.
So once upon a time, the idea was, right, your parents, you build a better life than your parents. And what we're seeing now is that kids are living with their parents. They
Yep.
don't have a hope of buying a home. They don't have a hope of that. And I think I do see the tides changing. I don't think we're seeing as many articles anymore about like, stop buying those lattes, stop buying
Yeah.
avocado
Oof.
toast. We're finally seeing, you know, people stop lecturing young people on avocado toast. They're
Yeah.
seeing that, okay, we've got to stop saying that because it's not avocado toast is the
Right.
reason why they can't buy a
Right.
home.
You
But
have a
there's a real
great
problem.
you have a great in your book. I'm just gonna, because Tessa's book is so good. She this is a quote in here that when millennials were born, tuition at public four-year colleges was just $3,190 per year, adjusted for inflation. By the time they grew up and enrolled in college, tuition rose, are you ready? 213%. 213%. And I'm not making 213% of, right, maybe
Mhm.
what my parents made, you know, kind of thing,
Yes.
right? Uh, to a cost of $9,970 a year. And also between the years when millennials were born and a few years after they finished college, the cost of an undergraduate degree rose 213% at public schools. So that's the overall, right?
Mhm.
It's so when we're comparing, that's the problem. You know, when we're
Yeah.
quote adjusting for inflation, the how much more things are costing is no joke. And you talk in the book too about how average young adult workers earn $10,000 less than young adults in 1989, which
Mhm.
is a decline of 20%. So, and you know, many jobs require a degree, right?
Yes.
While in the late 80s, the same young worker with no degree earn roughly the same amount of money.
Mhm.
And this is the thing that I think gets ignored a lot. You know, when avocado toast is brought up, which makes me
Yes.
crazy. Yes, or don't have an iPhone or something, or don't have a cell phone. You know, that it's really getting missed is that uh it's not adjustable. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's not relatable. Sorry. It's like comparing apples to not oranges, but to gorillas.
Yes.
Like it is that far, but I think we're fish that don't know we're wet. We haven't realized how bad. Do you know, because everyone's
Yes.
just been doing it. But I was talking not long ago with a friend of mine about how a friend of ours in high school, his job was putting in car stereos. That's what he did. He had a pickup
Mhm.
truck and he drove around and he put in car stereos. Okay. And he had two kids. He supported a family
Wow.
on that.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like just to give,
Yeah.
right? So no college, but a specialized skill. Like
Yeah.
this specialized skill. He had all the tools and all the things, right? But he supported himself and a family. That, so you could do that. You could be a skilled worker in some way like that. Not a skilled worker like, oh, I know all these software, I know AI. Yeah, that's a skill. You don't necessarily have to have a college degree and be incredible at AI or something else and get a job. But there's no comparison. That's, I think. And I'm a little tough. I'm right on that line of boomer, and because I'm 65, so right on that. Yeah, I know, you all know how old I am. I'm right on that line, but I also had much older siblings, and so I feel like I was really kind of boomer. But a lot of the Gen X stuff really hits hard. Having to leave the house in the morning, being told, I don't want to see you, literally being told that. I don't want to see you till 5 o'clock.
Oh,
Like, we
wow.
weren't allowed back in the house.
Really?
Back in the house, we had to be out. Yeah, when the street lights came on, pretty much, and you would hear parents yelling out of windows, and then you'd go home. But you weren't allowed to just come in and out of the house all night. That wasn't a thing. And it's the latchkey kid thing. You had keys to your, there was a very different vibe around stuff. Sometimes I'm saying stuff to my kids and they're like, what? They can't even, they're so far from that. Granted, I had kids older, but they just can't even get their heads around
Yeah.
I love this. Wait, I just have to share it really quick. We're driving by a sign here in town the other day, and it said 1-800 got pain or something like that, right? It was an injury lawyer, right? And I'm just giving her props, I guess. Anyway, so right, that's what it says. The injury lawyer, it's the one who got pain. And my daughter goes, I don't know how people are supposed to know what to call with got pain, when it has words like that. I said, oh, well, each number in your phone,
oh gosh,
3 letters correlated.
They don't know that the numbers are correlated to the letters.
He had no idea. She's a smart 17-year-old. She's not she's not some I don't, I'm not part of, but enough. And I thought, holy shit. And I was trying to be, not laugh at her or anything, I'm like, oh, okay. But this just happened last night. I thought, how crazy is that? But I think someone listening right now is going, oh, that's what that is.
Yes.
There's numbers on the phone. And then I went back with her. I said, yeah, I remember, the phones were on the wall and they were rotary.
Yeah.
You had to put your finger in, and you had if you were lucky, you had a long cord so you could go and have a private conversation.
Or you could go into your room and shut the door. Something like that.
We didn't have that. But and it was later, I think, that the push button phone came out.
Oh.
It's just a weird time.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's just a very weird time that way. And again, I think people think they're comparing apples to oranges, and they're comparing apples to gorillas. So I just want to say that. And I think your book did such a good job of laying out these kind of examples. Millennials are, they're buying houses later, not because they're buying avocado toast, but because it takes longer to save the money because their houses are more expensive.
Yes. And I think what was happening a lot of times is I think the older generations were thinking, oh, they're Peter Pans. They're wanting to be young a long time. They're wanting this and they're wanting that. And it's no, it was because they needed, they needed 2 incomes. They needed to establish themselves. They needed to get to this, it took so much for them to establish something for them to get into the home. That's what was happening. And what I was also seeing for young people themselves is they were also feeling like there was something inherently wrong with them, because what they were hearing from their parents was, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you doing what we were doing? Because the parents kept comparing them, to their lives. And they were looking at that. And that's another big thing that I kept seeing over and over again was the influence of, and I talk about this in the book, social media, and the impact of technology and social media, and how social media plays such a huge role in how young people see themselves, and just the comparisonitis, and how easy it is, even though when you go on social media, it's not all real, how easy it is to, and I was I scroll through it too, and I start to feel really bad about myself, and then I start to feel anxious about all the stuff I'm not doing, and should I be promoting this, and should I be doing this and that, right? You start to feel yourself getting anxious as you go through, and the impact of this combination of feeling like what's wrong with me? Like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not excelling in the ways in which I should be excelling? And I think we're finally starting to realize that it's got nothing to do with these generations. It's got to do with a whole host of things that are really out of the control of this generation. It's got to do with things that are much larger that happened, that we now know happened, historical events that happened.
Right. Oh, so good. So, okay. So let's talk. Everyone hopefully has this background now, really understanding that it's different if you're listening. And a lot of my listenership, I know I see you, are between kind of 28 to 44 is the vast majority of who's listening right now. So I know this is really, can be right on the money for all of you and some of my younger ones too. Thank you for tuning in, and my older ones. But what is exactly, because I think quarter life crisis, even, I like how you were talking about it earlier when we were chatting earlier, before the podcast, because we had to catch up, about what is a quarter life crisis exactly. When you're talking about it, what do you mean?
So a quarter life crisis it's a crisis of identity, essentially. It's a crisis of, who am I? How did I get here? It's when you hit this place of, the person that you thought you were isn't quite right anymore. It's not who I am. And I think what trips up a lot of people is when they hear quarter life, much like midlife, right? Because you don't necessarily have to be 40 to have a midlife crisis, just as you don't have to be exactly 25 to have a quarter life crisis.
Yes.
So I say to people, you can be, because I talk about this in the book where I have my own quarter life crisis at 27, right? You can be 32, 33 and have a quarter life crisis. You can be 23 and have a quarter life crisis. It's really dependent on where you are in your life, the circumstances of your life, where, all of these other factors. But it's really when you've hit a place. And for me, it was, I had this vision of who I was and what I wanted my life to be. And I had built my entire life around it. And it was so, my identity was around it, what I thought my whole life was going to be. And I got to this point where it hit me that I really didn't know who I was, that I had spent my entire life and really had built in every waking hour, building this life for something that I didn't really want anymore. And it was very hard. I had to first, untangle myself from this identity that I had spent so much time and energy. I was sort of this person that had dreamed of working in Hollywood my entire life. And to kind of let go, I had to let go of this identity of, this is who I was going to be. And then I had to walk back a little bit of like, okay, so if I'm not going to be that person, if this isn't who I am, then who am I? What kind of life am I going to live? Like, how am I going to, how am I going to live? And it really forced me to figure out and, really stop and think about my ego and how, right? Like, do I need to be someone who needs to work in Hollywood to feel special, to feel like an important person? And that's what the process was like for me. And I think each person has to figure out for themselves, like, why are you doing what you're doing? Because I had to ask myself, like, why am I working so hard? Why am I doing this job? Like, what's the purpose of all of this? Like, if you're going to get up every day and go do this work, why are you going to go do it? And so everybody's crisis looks a little different. Everybody's situation's a little bit different. And that's why when people come to me and they say, I think I'm going through a crisis. Am I going through a crisis? And, how does this look? I always say, like, don't spend too much time trying to figure out if you're going through a crisis. If you think you're going through a crisis, you think you're going through a crisis. Like,
right.
People spend way too much time trying to figure out if it's a crisis or not. Okay, fine. It's okay, you're going through something. Like, great.
Why do we have to label it? It just is, but you definitely need help.
If you're struggling, you're struggling, so great. You're struggling. So that's what's going on. But it's really about this. And that's what's so hard about it is it's this separation between what you think your life is going to look like and who you think you are versus what is happening.
Right.
And that's what's so hard.
That's so good. I actually, it's as you're talking, I'm thinking, God, a quarter life crisis, a midlife crisis, I think they're the same thing.
They are. You're just at different
different points, right?
And they're different points, and also you also know different things about yourself. You have different time frames, right? Like you have different time. I think what's so hard about the quarter life is that you have and what's so hard about when you're young is you know far less about yourself, right? Because that's what's hard. Like when young people come to me, they don't know enough about themselves. This is the process of getting to know yourself that's so hard, and you're trying to figure out your career, right? I determined that I wanted to work in Hollywood and work in entertainment at 12, 13 years old, when I really didn't know who I was. So and I had created this identity around it. And that was the problem, was that I didn't become myself and then decide I was going to be this, I was going to work in Hollywood. I decided I was going to work in Hollywood and then tried to fit my personality around that. And that was the problem. And that's what a lot of people do, thinking that was going to make me happy.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens a lot of times is, and so when clients come to me, a lot of the work that I'm doing with them is this kind of strange thing of, this process of you're trying to figure out like who you are while you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. And you have to kind of at the same time go out and like figure out what you want to do with yourself. And so you have to like take on jobs and work at them. And then you're learning about yourself. And as you're learning about yourself, it influences the kind of jobs that you take and what you do. And and that influences all these things, and it influences the relationships you get into, right? And that influences who you are as a human being. And then who you are as who you are as a human being influences the relationships you get into, right? And you can see that. And all of that takes time, and that's a process. And that's why, finding that right relationship for you takes a long time. That's why finding that right career path takes a long time. That's why all of these things take a while.
Take a minute. Well, I think that's the difference in the past. If you went to college for something, you went and did that job because you'd already invested all this energy in it, right? I mean, that was the only, and I think that's why there used to be a midlife crisis more, just because you didn't come even to a place where you were allowed to look at yourself. It just was, right? You're going to do this, then you're going to do this, then you're going to get married, then you're going to have kids. And there was such a way that things were laid out. I did from the time I was 7, apparently, I always said I wanted to be a lawyer, to the point where all my gifts when I graduated high school were wrapped in there used to be Yellow Pages people, were Yellow Pages lawyers section. Do you know what I mean? And I went, and I have a bachelor's in political science. Yes, everyone. I do not have a bachelor's in psychology. I have a bachelor's in poli-sci, because I was going to be a lawyer. And then you go do that and you're like, oh, I hate this. What was I thinking? But I think so many people go, and you talk about it in the book, we'll talk about it. There's this sunk cost fallacy, which of course we learned in business school, but talk about that a little.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about this in the book, about this idea of, we tend to do this. And I did this too when I was in LA. Like, I really had a hard time when I realized, like, oh, I don't like what I'm doing. I had a hard time just packing up my stuff and leaving LA, because it was like, and at the time, being 27, right, I felt like I had devoted my entire life to this. I can't possibly leave. So when we devote so much time and energy to one thing, we have a hard time just giving it all up. And so we just keep putting more time and energy into it. And that's what we tend to do, is it's like a relationship, like anything else, is we keep digging in and we keep digging in and we keep digging in, trying to make something work that we know isn't going to work. And it's hard, right? And at the same time, I do think there is something to be said for, like in relationships too, where we have to kind of, beat it till it's dead, right? Sometimes in life we have to give it everything that we can, just to know that we have
all
to.
The time. Well, people are in a marriage or a relationship.
Yes.
And what I hear all the time is someone might be in a relationship for years, and then, you start younger, maybe in your early 20s, and now you're in your late 20s, and you're realizing maybe this isn't your person, but you're going
Mhm.
forward because you're starting to think, well, I want to have kids.
Yes.
And if I start all over again, that's going to be, and then you're forcing something as opposed to just remembering, like, God, you could break up today and meet the love of your life tomorrow and be married in 3 months. Like, you don't know.
Mhm.
You don't know. Like, there's
Yeah.
this idea about it. And in business, we call this sunk cost, where
Yeah.
there's certain things that you're always investing in a business. And then but there's can be this fallacy that, oh, well, I already have all this money invested in this business, so I'm going to have to keep putting good money after bad
Yes.
because I have to make this pay off, as opposed to, taking the loss, quote unquote, and moving and learning from it and moving on again, and maybe making $1 million in your business the next week. Like, you don't,
Mhm.
from everything you learned, you don't know. But that's what happens, I think, in so many, and with the clients I meet too, like you do, that they have this idea, this scarcity of, well, I already invested. I
Mhm.
already went to school for this. Oh my God, all the money my parents spent on this education, or I spent on this education, I can't just throw it out the window.
Yeah.
And you're not. I mean, I learned a lot of things in my poli-sci degree that I feel like I still use, and I still have
Yes.
a active interest in politics and other things. Like, it's okay. Learning is learning,
Mhm.
growing is growing, and it gets you to the next place, but it's very easy to forget in the moments, right?
Yeah. And I always say to people that I truly believe, and some of this is just because I'm, getting older and I've been on the earth a lot longer, is I truly believe that every job that you have has helped me in
Yep.
everything. My
Yep.
years of working in Hollywood and the jobs that I did there continue to help me to this day. Yeah, I have a film degree, and you would
Right.
think that would be angry and resentful that I have this film degree, and I'm not.
Yeah.
I think college and my college experiences, I'm very grateful for. It was a great time, and I think that that and especially in undergrad education is really not about what you major in. It
Right.
really
Right.
isn't.
Yep.
So it's a little bit of, you go and you do that for other reasons. I mean, do I look back and go, did I have to work as hard as I did? Probably not. Like, I wish that I had relaxed a little bit more and enjoyed my life a little bit more, for sure. I
Uh-huh.
think that's probably, probably something I should be doing in general.
Yeah.
But look, you're never ever going to regret doing things that you believed in, you enjoyed, you wanted to do, all of those
Okay. So,
taking leaps. You're taking,
right.
right, leaps
Yep.
towards whatever it is that you want to do.
Without a
So,
doubt. All right. So there you go. So it's really being stuck at any point and
yes,
really feeling like you're,
disconnected from who you are, or
yep,
something doesn't feel right
something
inside of
that's
you.
good. Yep. In
Yeah.
whatever way that is for you. So you could be 45 hearing this going, oh my gosh, that's me. Or
Yes.
be 25 hearing this saying, oh my gosh, that's me. So it doesn't matter.
Yes.
So don't get
Yes.
hooked on
On whatever quarter
terminology,
life, midlife, whatever it
because
is.
yeah,
It's a
because the
crisis.
steps are the same. And
Mhm.
and I like this kind of this little process that Tess has, where it's calm, explore, reflect, and build. So we're going to go through it. So let's talk about, it's kind of like the steps to getting out of it. What do you do? So yeah, great, Abby Tess, I'm stuck in this thing. I am feeling all those feelings. What do I do now? And so the first kind of step in that is calm. And so can you
Mhm.
talk about that? Like your thoughts, identifying your thoughts and feelings and all the things.
Yeah. So step one is always just take a moment, take a beat.
Take a beat.
Don't freak out. So what usually happens is people either go in one or two directions. They either start making a bunch of decisions. They start like, I got to quit my job, I got to leave town, I got to do all of these things, and or they do nothing. They stay stuck. They stay in,
Paralyzed.
they stay paralyzed, and they do because what happens is they stay paralyzed because they feel like, okay, I have to figure out what my next job is, what my next career is. So they're like, maybe I'll become a doctor, maybe I'll become this, maybe I'll become that. And then they're like, but I don't like science. So okay, so maybe I'll become,
Right.
they start to go in these
They
circles,
go
and
too
then
big.
yeah,
Yeah.
they try
The
to
rest of
figure
their
out
life.
Yeah, they try to figure
Yeah.
out what their end goal is. And it's a little bit like, you can't figure that out. Like that's too much.
Right.
So what you need to do is you don't change everything and don't change nothing. You have to first figure out, you've got to get yourself a little bit centered. You've got a lot of feelings going on, and you've got to start to figure out what are you thinking and feeling? What is going on? Because your thoughts and feelings are clues. They are your signals, your clues, these are the things that are going to tell you exactly what you're feeling, what's going on with you. And what's happening, what I've noticed is that for a long, long time, it seemed like people were, and they still are, like very afraid of their thoughts and feelings. We spend a lot of time like labeling our thoughts and feelings, like, oh, those are bad thoughts, these are good thoughts, I want these thoughts, I don't want those thoughts. It's like, stop. There are no good or bad thoughts, there are no good or bad feelings, they're just the thoughts and feelings that we have. Stop trying to label them and trying to understand them. It's not about the thoughts and feelings that we have. It's really about what separates us is how we react to them. It's how we choose to deal with them. So if you feel sad, it's not about like, oh my God, I'm feeling sad, that's bad. It's more about how you choose to react to feeling sad.
Right.
So when you feel sad, the thing is, it's not about, oh God, I got to fix the sadness. I got to fix it. I got to fix it. It's more about, okay, I'm feeling sad. Why am I feeling sad? What's going on with me? Like, where is the sadness coming from? And sometimes the sadness is, it's really, I'm just feeling sad. Like there's no solution for it. There's nothing. I'm just feeling lonely, or I'm feeling down, or there's nothing. And then other times the sadness is really coming from somewhere that you can identify and maybe you can solve, or or there is something that you can address and figure out. But what you need to start to do is you need to start to learn how to identify what's going on with you. And if you are sitting here, if you're listening to this going, I really have no idea how to identify my thoughts and feelings at all, then you've got to start to learn how to, it's about mindfulness. It's about meditation. You've got to, and I'm sure, I know on this podcast, you talk about all the time.
All the time. Everyone's rolling their eyes right now. They're like, how did she sneak mindfulness into this also?
Yes, but you've got to. It's the only way to know what you're thinking and feeling in real time. And it's got to be in real time because it's the only way you're going to know how you really feel in that moment. Like when someone brings something up. And another thing that I recommend to people a lot is, especially if a big reason why people have these quarter life, midlife crisis, a lot of it is centered around work. Some of it is relationships for sure, but what a lot of people come to me about is connected to work. And when it comes to work, I say to people, well, have you ever sat down and really kind of audited a day at work? Like, what parts of your job do you like? What do you hate? Like, who do you like? Who do you not like? Like, so after a meeting, do you ever sit down and go, what parts of that meeting did I like? What did I not like? What parts of your job? Like, do you really sit down and you just audit your day? Like, what things, what tasks, what any of this stuff did you enjoy? So just start taking an accounting every day of like, what is lighting you on fire? Like what's exciting you and what's bringing you down, to start to get a sense of, what's happening for you. Right. And so you want to be a little bit of a detective. You're, the curious case of you, what's going on with you? What's happening with you?
That's great.
And that's how you start to begin to better understand you and what's happening with you. And the more, and I'm sure you talk about this too, which is the more you do this, the easier it'll get, the more you'll get a better practice of this. And the more that you'll understand that you can't run from these feelings, and the more that you'll understand that, this will start to clue you in on and give you an idea of, oh, these are the things about my job I like. These are the things in the areas that are working in my life. And these are the areas that are not working. Yeah. Because what I find more often than not is a lot of times people come and think, oh my God, everything in my life needs to change. My whole life, I need to blow it up. And then usually, and there's a story about this in the book too, where one person who thought everything in their life needed to blow up. And it was a little bit of like, no, you just need to transfer it within your company. You just need to that really it's not everything. It's usually just one or two things, small things that need to be
Right.
tweaked.
But it
So
depends on where those are in your life, how
yes.
central, if your relationship is, if you don't have a job and your relationship is the primary thing that's going on, then that
Mhm.
feels like, oh, we have to break up, or we have to
Yes.
marriage counseling, we have to whatever. And if it's your job, if it's your kids,
Mhm.
there's a way that whatever's in the center is really what takes priority. So,
Yes.
and I love that. I think that's so true. I've had so many people say to me, like, I have to change everything. And when you start doing a little audit, which I never use
Yeah.
those words, which I now am going to steal, uh, it, when you start saying that, they start auditing, they realize, oh, there's a lot of parts of my job I actually like. It's just
Mhm.
this particular coworker or this whatever thing, or there's a lot of parts of my relationship I like. I
Mhm.
just don't like this thing, whatever it is. And so I love that. And then you can get really granular on what to do next.
Yeah.
And before we go to the next step, I just want to say, so for anyone listening, I have a mindfulness starter kit. You can download it on the website, on the shop page. You don't have to pay for it. It's free. Or I'll have it on the, show notes page for this, but just start being mindful. It really is. And you can't change anything until you see how you're feeling in a moment. And
Mhm.
so for anyone listening who face palms later, like, oh, I can't believe I said that, or I wish I had said this, or whatever, that's mindfulness. So
Yes.
I think that's number one. And what I also hear you saying is not to be afraid of your feelings.
Mhm.
They're just, feelings aren't facts, and
Yes. And they're
they're
not
just,
final.
they're
They're
right.
not the end.
They're not
Better for
they're not
worse.
final. I love it. So to remember that and get into those moments and not be so afraid. I love that. So
Yeah.
calm is definitely your first step. Just
Yes.
take a beat, get mindful, get in the moments, and see what's really going on. I
Yes.
love that. I love that. Okay. And then the second thing that you talk about, which I hadn't ever really heard anyone talk about before, is this idea of starting to explore and going out into the world. So, like when
Mhm.
you're feeling stuck. So now
Yeah.
you're calm. Now I'm starting to identify my feelings. Now I'm exploring. What am I doing?
Yeah. Well, so what happens now is, so people then feel like, right, they feel like, well, I need to quit my job, or I can't, what am I going to do? I need to, and I hear this a lot from people, and what they automatically go to is they instantly go to this place of, okay, I'm going to just, I need to quit, or I can't leave my job, or they start to like look at they start looking at other jobs, and then they start looking at other jobs and they realize, like, I'm not qualified for anything, or there's nothing that's really interesting. And then they go down this rabbit hole, and then they start applying for other jobs and they don't hear back, or they look at other jobs and they're not qualified. And then they realize they can't apply for them. And then they feel hopeless, and then they're depressed again, and they hate this and that, right. And then the cycle continues.
Yeah.
And the thing is that part of it too is they don't even really want these jobs. And I'm like, well, stop. You don't even know what you want to do yet. So why are you looking for jobs that you don't even really want, that you're going to apply for, that you're not qualified for? It's like, stop.
Yeah.
You have to figure out what's out there. Like, why don't you first try to figure out, like, what's out in the world? So I talk about, I always use this example of like career land. Like, there's a whole big host of jobs out in the world, career land. And career land is also not just the jobs that you do, but it's also careers in general, of like, what does that look like? Because work and careers and jobs, there's lots of different parts of it, right? Some people just have jobs. They just have a job that they do and they go to, and they come home at night and they have a whole other hobbies, and like, it's just a job to them. They work and they come home and they pay their bills, and their life is what they do when they get home. You know, it's also figuring out what's the role that you want work to play in your life.
Mhm.
Some people, right, like, it's that part of it too. So it's like kind of going out into the world and exploring what is out there. So what I recommend to my clients is, before you start making these crazy ideas, and before you go on Indeed and go down a rabbit hole of jobs, like, go out in the world and start doing some research. So if you have this interest in, right, becoming a lawyer, if you use this example, before you start taking the LSATs, which is where people usually
Yeah.
start, why don't you reach out to, you friends, family, friends, your parents must know at least, a bunch of lawyers. Like, why don't you talk to 4 or 5 lawyers of various backgrounds that do different kinds of law, and anyone is willing to talk to you for 30 minutes and
Always.
say, tell me about a day of your life of being a lawyer, because you want to ask people, like, what's it like for a day of your life? Because work is what you do every single day, not like what your overview of your job is, but
Right.
like, what do you do all day? Like, what's it like to write a brief? Like, are you writing briefs all day? Or are you on phone calls? Like, what is this life?
Yep.
Like, being a real estate attorney is very different than being a civil litigator. Then it's very different than being this kind of attorney or this kind of attorney, right? You want to start doing some research. Like, go ask people these questions. Then go, I don't know, before you take the LSATs, go get one of these LSAT books and say to yourself, I'm going to read or take a quiz, and I'm going to do this 4 quizzes, or, or an hour a day, or whatever it is that you're going to do. Maybe if it's not being a lawyer, then maybe it's taking a class or two in, you want to take one of those boot camp classes, right? You want to be a software engineer or something like that, right? But you don't know if it's right for you. Then take a class, like a 1-day class or something like that.
Yeah.
Pick low stakes, low hanging fruit
Yep.
things that are like, that can give you some kind of hit of whether or not this is interesting. If it's interesting, if it interests you, then go to the next rung, and then the next rung, and the next rung, and the next rung. So just start to explore what's out there. Like, just see what that is. People go to these really extreme places, and then they start making decisions based on an Indeed, like, a write-up of a job. You can't tell anything from that. Go to the source. Like, take the class and do the work and see if you like it. Ask someone who actually does the job every day and ask them, what do you do? Like, so does that sound interesting to you? Not based on what they think, but based on, what is it that you do? And you tell me. Ask those kinds of questions. Like, that's why I'm saying, be a detective. Like, suss out what it is, and then you make a decision based on that, versus what a company is copying and pasting on an Indeed ad.
Right.
That's what I mean by explore.
I love it. And we used to call these informational interviews back in you would go on these things, right? So I love that. And there's also, there's so many ways. Like, I've sent clients to take a glass blowing class, and there's like a place here in Oakland called the Crucible that I'm giving you a shout out, that has all kinds of like metal working and other stuff. Sometimes just getting out of your head, something creative, will help you just do some of the calm from the first thing, but also help you open your horizons to what else is there. Because sometimes if all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail, right?
Yeah.
So, you've been in the tech field all these years, and you're thinking, well, I don't want to lose all my tech experience, even though you want to do something else. I mean, you go from like Hollywood to therapy, right? To being a therapist. It's like it can seem like such a big jump, but it might not be. You might have a lot of tools in there that were very useful instead. And I think that's the thing for people to get out of that sunk cost idea. The fallacy of that is to not just think, well, I have to do something that's kind of similar. Really. And I have a few clients who, for example, got laid off from Google and Apple, some big tech firms, right? Who were there for many years, and they got laid off in all these huge layoffs that just happened. And we're spending time, and these are people really in their 40s with kids, we're spending time really talking about, do you want another job? Like, a lot of people got the jobs right out of high school, where Google was like the job to get. Like, Google, oh my gosh, it's like having Harvard on your resume, right? Like, wow. And so first of all, there's a lot of ego attached to that, of course, a lot of pride and that kind of thing. But beyond that, what happened often is when you come out of school, when you're 20 and now you're 40, do you want the same things? Do you, and did you actually, were you on a career path then, or did you get an internship at Google, which a lot of people did, and then they got hired into whatever was open? And then they suddenly, I have one person who was in HR for years, and she's like, I hate HR. But that's where she built her career at Google, like, it was like, but that's not really what she wants to do now. But, well, I've only done HR. I'm like, yeah, but that could be a lot of things now. Like it really could. So what,
Mhm.
and you have to start. So I was actually sending her to take some just art classes.
Yeah, which is always a
Do
good idea.
something
Yeah.
else. Get your head out of your ass and do something else and really let your mind relax.
Mhm.
Because from that place, we get creative, we get inspired, and maybe you'll meet someone at the class. It might not be the class itself. You might meet someone who's does something, I makes mosaics or something like, I don't know, or doesn't
Mhm.
even do anything arty, just does something else that you had never thought. They're in the restaurant business. You're like, oh, I've always kind of loved to cook. I don't know. You might find another avenue just from the exploration and opening your mind up. So
Mhm.
I really love that. And that's true too. If you feel stuck in your relationship, if you feel like it doesn't have to be just work when you're exploring, because a lot of times we're blaming our partner for unhappiness, and really it's got nothing to do with them. It's
Yes.
really about you and how do you be happy. And the only way to figure that out is to start, and maybe you haven't worked for a while, so do some interventional interviews.
Yeah.
Think if you maybe do want to get a job now, or a part-time one, or do you want to again take some art classes or something, just to open your minds up to like, what makes me happy? And so that's what I really like about this explore thing is,
Yeah.
first of all, you're taking action. I love that you're taking low-hanging fruit action. You're not deciding the rest of your life. You don't have to, become a ceramicist,
Yes.
but you can take a class.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, and I think this is one of the things, this is a generational thing. Cause in my generation, right, like we were told, like, I would call people and ask them for, hey, can you do this for me? Do that for me. And I do think that this is one thing with these younger generations, they have a much harder time, like reaching out, like, you want me to reach out to someone? You want me to like, yeah.
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, I do. And I want you to like pick up a phone and call
Yeah.
them. I want you to like, maybe email them and tell them that you're going to call
Uh-huh.
them, but you're going to do this. And I think this is really, really important to, that this informational interviewing stuff has gone by the wayside, that we
Yeah.
do need to get back to learning how to reach out to people. And you'd be surprised. People think that it is such a huge thing to ask someone. I said, people who won't talk to you, you won't hear from. It's fine.
Yeah.
But I said, I cannot tell you all the people that have been strangers to me that I have agreed to chat with for 30 minutes on the phone. And I've given them, thoughts and
Yep.
advice and help. And, if I've been at a point in my life where I couldn't help them, I either said no, or I just did not respond and I moved on.
Yep.
Like, that is life.
Yep.
But
I
so
too.
if there's anyone out there, like, trust me, people will respond. And if they don't, it's not that they hate you, it's just they
Yeah.
can't. So just keep moving forward.
Keep moving
But
and
yeah,
send out a lot of those so you get
yeah,
a lot.
but people do want to help you. They do.
Yeah.
And people like talking about themselves. So keep
That's what
going.
I was going
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah.
People really usually like talking about their work,
Yes.
especially if you're at a place where you're not wanting something from them that's like a job. If you're really just, contacting them to ask questions, as
Mhm.
opposed to really my ulterior motive is to try to get a job with you.
Yes.
So don't
Yes.
do that. Don't have ulterior motives,
Yes. Don't do
really,
that. Yeah.
be really open, and you'd be surprised. And I've talked to a lot of strangers
Mhm.
about counseling in the field
Yes.
and what degrees
Yes.
are best and how to do what I do, and all that.
Yeah.
So you'd be amazed. And yeah, I'm the same way. If I don't have time, sometimes I just can't do it. And I'll say, hey, circle back in September. I'll see if I have,
Mhm.
an open schedule. Other times it's like, I'm sorry, I really don't. But
Mhm.
I'll tell you, a lot of the time I say yes. I'm like, sure, I can jump on a quick call with you. And
Mhm.
so, people are always shocked.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't have to be shocked. It's true. A lot of us want to help. It's a nice thing
Mhm.
to do in the world. So
Yeah.
I love that. And that takes me to, well, it's really part of this step and the next one, which is reflect. When you start really determining your values, right?
Mhm.
So can you speak about that a little bit? And
Yeah.
by the way, there's all these exercises in Tess's book that really go deep in each of these areas about like
Mhm.
how to determine your values and how to be I just want to say that, but we
Yeah.
can do good stuff now too. You don't even have to buy the book, but if you do, and I highly recommend it.
I
Yes,
would like for you to buy the
I'm
book.
pushing my friend's book, but I am, because it's a good book. I have it.
Yes.
It's a good book. So, but I'm just saying there's a lot of like more how-tos in there. Just
Mhm.
throw that out there. But so let's talk about determining.
Yeah. So, I mean, with each of these extra, so as you're going out and, and exploring and going out in the world, yeah, you want to come back in and you want to reflect. You want to take in all of the things that you're learning about yourself, you're learning about the world, and you want to reflect on it. You want to take it in and ask yourself, okay, is this going to work for me? Because what's also hard is you're going to get a lot of opinions. This is the part that's really difficult is, and this is the impact of social media and the internet and everything is, once upon a time, the opinions that you would hear were right of your parents, your friends, your family. Now we hear everybody's opinion. We hear every last person's opinion known to man. And I think that, and I think this is what's very hard is that there's a tremendous amount of white noise. And I talk about this in the book about just all the, I call it the outside noise. There's so much outside noise. There's so many people. There's so many people that want to weigh in. And I do think that this is, because of that, a lot of young people do rely on too many people's opinions to, I have so many clients who, like I say, they go out, they'll like post on social media, like, should I break up with my boyfriend? Or they're like, should I do this? Should I do that? It's like, stop doing that. You need to decide what you're going to do. Stop crowdsourcing, your life. Like, stop, like, you need to decide inside of you what you're going to do. And you've got to make decisions based on what you want to do. So as if you're talking to these attorneys about what they're doing, you have to come back and ask yourself these questions like, okay, this is all I heard, what sounds interesting to me? And you do have to ask, like, does this sound interesting because this person's really enthusiastic about it? Or does it sound interesting because that sounds interesting to me? Right? Do I want to do this because they want to do this? Or do I want to do this because this is what I want to do each day? So it keeps coming back to, back to money, title, all of this stuff is nice, but what you do all day is what's going to sustain you. And you really have to think about who you are, your personality, and what you want to do all day. If you're somebody who really does not like chit-chatting with people all day, if you're not a people person, if you're not really interested in people, being a therapist probably would not be good for you at all. If you're not someone who's fascinated by people, like, this would not be a good job for you. So even if you chat with someone who tells you about how amazing it is to be a therapist, you really have to think that through and think about that. And that's that piece about some of the exercises that I give you in the book around values, which is really trying to understand, like, what's important to you? What do you value? Who are you? Like, these questions. So that's why when I'm saying, like, when you go out and explore, you want to take in all this information, but you want to filter it through your lens of you, like, what's going to work for you. And how do you do that? So that's that reflection piece of, like, you gather all this information in, you take it all in, and you think about, okay, this is all these opinions that I've heard. This is all the facts. These are all the opinions. What's going to work for me?
I love
in my life.
Because I think it's funny, when I wanted to become a lawyer, that's my mother said, you have to go work with a lawyer. And she did, she helped me. She was a big civil rights activist, and I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. And she helped me get in, do a little summer internship with a lawyer. And, I'm very me and gregarious and want to talk to people and want to do my thing. And it was all, sitting with books, writing briefs, looking for little minutia. And I was horrified. You didn't talk to anybody all day, half the day. You were like locked in with your books, and you were, making notes and looking things up and looking up references. I love what you said earlier about, and I hadn't really thought of it this way, but asking people what they actually do all day, because it's true what these people did all day, right? If I said, what do you love about your job? They'd be like, oh, defending people and, having people find their liberty and their, identifying their civil rights. And it would be amazing. And that would be so great. They would have told me things that I would have been like, yes, I want to do all that. But when I said, what do you do all day? And they had given me what you do all day, it's like, oh, I don't like that. Oh, those things are like twice a year, or, once a month. Like, but the day-to-day of it is this other stuff. And that's, I think, so brilliant about that. And then that's part of your values. You're right. Like my value in connecting with people and talking to people and having that was a high value of mine. And
Mm-hmm.
so I wanted to help people. That was a high value in
Yeah.
both ways, but these were two very different ways to do it.
Yes.
Right. So I really love, I'm trying to give this example to people to really understand like how smart what Tess is saying is. Like really these quote unquote little things really make all the difference in determining what's important to you. And then when you reflect and really think about like I don't like, as Tess knows, I'm not a social media fan. It's not my thing. And I was always told, like, you have to have a big social media following, and
Mm-hmm.
here's what you got to do, or you're never going to make it, and here's how. And I really don't like it. It's not of me. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
boomer Gen Xer. We didn't have it. I was late to the game. It's not my thing. But I have a small social media following, yet I have a very large, successful podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And, YouTube is growing and other things. Like it's all great. I have a big email list and I have other things that are very important to me. But if I'd listened to people saying, this is the only way you're going to be successful at this. So I
Mm-hmm.
love this reflect thing and your values, because you've got to sit and go, well, is it possible to be successful another way within this job, whatever it is that
Mm-hmm.
I'm attracted to, or within this relationship, or within this, whatever that it is that you want to do, wherever
Yeah.
you're feeling stuck. And yes, to take it all in and then to stop and reflect. Oh, but that's not the way I do it. Or that's not important to me. Is there another way? Like
Yeah.
that whole piece, I think is
Well, I mean,
so
even
smart.
if you pick out how the world of psychotherapy, coaching, all of this world has changed
Oh,
radically
yeah.
from when I was in grad school, when you were, going to school, and all of this has changed so much just in the time that we've been practicing and all of that.
Yep.
And you're absolutely right, which is yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why I think it's so important for people to, if you want to be a lawyer, don't just talk to one lawyer.
Right.
You know what I mean? Talk to many. Like, so what
Yeah.
do you do? So what does that
Yeah.
look like?
Right.
Because there are probably many different kinds of civil rights attorneys. And so what does this one do? What does this one do? Oh, so is it all civil rights attorneys do
Yeah.
this? Oh, okay. So maybe is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Like figuring out, and for some people I've said to them, like, okay, so maybe civil rights justice is your hobby, and
Right.
this is the thing that you do as a career, is the thing that this is your hobby, and your hobby is really important, and this is the thing that you do 9 to 5 is your job. And I
Right.
and I think, especially, we're here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and what's so hard about being here is, everybody's career is just,
Oh, yeah.
everybody here has to be hard charging, Silicon Valley,
Yeah.
inventing an app, Mark
Yes.
Zuckerberg. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on people here to be constantly like moving, going, doing.
Mm.
But you can just have a job here and
Yes.
just be, and
True.
have hobbies and have other things that you're doing. But that's part of the process as well, is deciding that for yourself. Like, not everything has to be huge.
I love
You can
that.
have other values and
Yep.
beliefs,
I love it. And I was thinking of a client I have who recently moved from sort of like a farther away place closer to her job in San Francisco. This idea that they had, like, oh, we have to buy a house that's far away to raise the kids, because you can't afford to buy a
Oh
house in
yeah.
San Francisco,
Well,
or you want a
$2
yard.
million. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or you want a yard or whatever. But then she was having this horrific commute every day because she does have to go in the office. She has a job
Mhm.
where she has to be in the office. So here she was, hours in her car, or we have public transportation or whatever here. And they've moved into the city. Like
Mm.
they were like, this dream we had, whatever this was, and they really didn't enjoy their neighbors in the burbs. Like they like city
Mm.
people. Like there was all these things that they thought, but when they determined their values, when we did this reflection, because she was feeling very stuck, like I'm gonna have to quit my job and get a job here in the burbs, but I don't know where one is. And and I'm
Yeah.
saying the burbs, it's like a few cities away. It's a place, near here. But and I was like, well, maybe you don't. Like, what are your other, we started to
Mhm.
reflect, and what are your values, and what are the things that are most important? And that's how you start to think different. It really is. I just think
Mhm.
I think this step could be easily jumped over.
Mhm.
So like, oh, I did all this exploring. I really liked what the civil rights lawyer did,
Mhm.
and you're done.
Yeah.
As opposed to really stopping and going, what are my values? What are the things that are most important? And how, so how else could this look? What
Yeah.
else could I do to make that happen? So I just want to really put that out there for people that don't skip that step.
Yes.
Don't skip that step. And then, when
Oh, and really quick, very fast. So the other thing with values that I always say to people too is we all have these core values that will always be with us, right? Kindness, love, like that will always be part of us. But we also have values that will morph and change in our lives. So I think that's also part of it too, which is I think a lot of times people get very stuck in, well, but this was my value here, but you can also decide like this is not a value of mine anymore.
Yep.
Right? Like we hit these walls in our lives where you might have had this value of my career was very, very important to me. And then you also might say, well, now your value is I want to be home with my children. Right?
Yeah.
Like this. So that's also part of it too. And it might be with, so you have the right and you have, so I think a lot of times, and I think that you probably have this too with your clients, a lot of times with my clients, I'm just giving them permission to change their values. So anyway,
that's
you have the right to change a value. Go ahead. Sorry.
right. Oh, that's so good. No, that was brilliant. It's so smart. And it is really true because that also happens in relationships that when you first get together and the things the two of you value
Yes.
can shift and change over time. And is why sometimes it's hard to have a relationship be very long term. It just who we are at 20 again,
Yes.
what we think is important. And then we have life experiences and all the rest can change. And it's okay. You're not a bad person for deciding you want other things at 45 than you did at 25, and to stop judging. Oh, well, what's wrong with why have I gone here? That's what I hear. I hear people just judging any change they make. And it's like, that's just growth, right? That's so love that. Love that you said that. And then this last piece, which is build, now I've reflected. So I've calmed myself down, went out in the world and explored all the way. I mean, really, right? I've gotten, taken a beat. And then I get out in the world and I explore all these different things. And I've tasted a lot of different plates, right? And then I sit and think, oh, what did I like about that? What did I hate about that? What did I love? And I start to really reflect on things and really like, what are my values? How does that align? And now it's time to build, right? Now it's time. Okay, now you're there. And it's as most things, I just want to point out, so much of the work happens before the decision. And I always akin it to painting a room. If you've ever painted a room, if you do it well, to paint a room well, you have to go in first and you have to tape off things. You have to cover the furniture. You have to edge the corners. You have to, make sure the carpeting's covered. You have to do a lot of work. And once you do all that prep, the painting is so quick. The painting goes really quick and looks beautiful, by the way. Looks as professional as you want it to look. But if you just get in there and start slapping paint on the walls, you know what I mean? And like, oh, I'll just kind of edge as I go and I'll just sort of do it, or I'll just do this little section. You've got paint on your couch. You've got paint right in the, like on your windowsill, and you never got it off. And you like, it's messy. It doesn't look good. So this idea of what you're saying, I just want to really reinforce to people. I know, we all want to get there.
Yeah.
But doing the prep, really doing the steps is where the magic happens. So now we're ready to build. Sorry, go.
Yeah. I mean, so the hope and desire is you've spent all this time. So you have all of this information about yourself. You have all this knowledge, this new knowledge about yourself, and you can start to put it together, whatever that looks like. And, I'm a big believer in doing the easiest thing first. Like doing the thing that is gonna, that is the simplest thing for us. So if based on all of the information that that you've found, if you don't have to leave your job, if you can just simply transfer, if it's as simple as, I think that if it really is about you and you changing like how you interact with people, like sometimes it is. And I've had this with clients where they realize like, you know what, I just need to restructure my days. I need to like make some changes in my life. I need to change my relationships with other people. I need to, restructure my days. I need to rethink some things of how I'm doing things. Like for some people it's that, and you'd be amazed. That's the building that they need to make. For other people it really is. It is a big piece of, okay, now I really do need to make some big giant lifestyle changes. So it is about it is about taking those simple steps, but building is just about like the putting one foot in front of the other and figuring out what do you need to do to build.
Yeah.
And listen, if you're a self-starter, great. Then, I'm a big believer in like sitting down, putting together a plan, figuring out what does this look like? How do I do this? If you've figured out and determined, like, I think this is this is the thing that I want to do. Like, this is the career. I think this is what I need to do. These are the skills that I need to figure it out and put it together. That's great. I'm also, if you're someone who feels like I need help, I need to go find help. I need to hire a coach. I need to hire someone to help me. Then go out and hire someone to help me. Or for some people, it's just about finding an accountability partner. Then go out and find an accountability partner. But the build part, you're right. You're absolutely right. Like if you've done all of this other work, this build thing it should actually be relatively straightforward. It's just on you to do it.
Right.
Like it's the action part. I think that it is the biggest part of it is that just not getting stuck in the just and I talk about this in the book as well about failure, right?
Yeah.
Like there is no such thing as failure. There is no such thing as like, don't get yourself caught up in this whole piece of like, if you go out there and you take the LSATs and you don't do very well, like, that doesn't mean you're going to be a terrible lawyer. Like, it's just like reassessing, like go take one of those courses and, get the prep, get someone to help you. If you really do want to do this, that's just a stupid test. It's got nothing to do with how well you're going to be a lawyer. Like play the game, do the thing, right? Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. It's like, don't get in your, just don't get in your way. It's a process.
Yeah.
And
well, there's no bad choices. I mean, you
yes,
talk about this. And
yeah.
I like in the book, you talk about redefining this word failure.
Mm-hmm.
So to really understand that you can't get it wrong. Like whatever you do next is going to get you to the next step,
Yes.
and that's going to get you the next thing. So you might even decide after all this, I want to be a lawyer. And then we're talking a lot about lawyers, but but then, you take the LSATs and I don't know, start applying to law school and you really go, is this it? Or maybe you're in law school, you've done all that and you take some classes and you're in law school and you're like, oh my God, I couldn't hate this more, and it's
Which happens. It happens.
Which happens. And it's okay at that point to think, I would tell you finish the semester, make sure.
Yeah.
But other than that, always don't quit things right away. Don't, and you've talked about this too. Don't just a second you hit something, go, oh my God, that's it. That's a sign from the universe. I'm not supposed to do it. But, finish out the semester, maybe in that case, or finish out 6 months at the job and then shoot and then think again, like and really then go back, I think, to reflecting, like, what did I miss in my reflection process?
Yes.
What did I, okay, what did I not think about? Oh, this not having a commute is more important to me than I thought, or working from home is more important to me than I thought, or whatever. You start to really reflect in a different way. And that's the way it's like adjusting, what is that thing about planes, when they're flying somewhere, they're off course like 98% of the time or something, they're always like readjusting a little bit because there's always air currents and things happening. They're always like slightly readjusting.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes what happens on the other side of this.
Well, that's that sunk cost fallacy. What happens for a lot of people is, and I've heard this from people too, where they realized that first semester they hated it, but they kept going because they felt like, well, I'm here and I went through this whole process of getting in and I worked so hard to get here. So I kept going and I spent all this money on the first year's tuition, but you're just kind of like, so you're going to keep going and spend more money on this thing that you absolutely hate. But it's true. It's people do that, but they absolutely hate it. But you're absolutely right. Like if you just after that first semester just said, okay, I just spent a bunch of money on this one semester, but if I just left, they probably would have realized like, oh, you know what? I let my ego get the best of me. I felt like I needed to be a lawyer because of this reason. And I didn't want to give up on this, and this. And so I just needed to let that go. And, whatever that reason is here. And,
Right.
right. Like if you just keep checking in with yourself, if you just keep getting honest with yourself about why you're doing these things, you're better off and just accepting like, okay, I wasted some money here. I wasted some money. Got it. Okay. Then then the, what is it? 300, 400,000 that you're going to waste in law school.
Right. Much better to know early. And, when I've spent money on things that later I thought, what the hell? Yeah. I think to myself, I'm going to pretend I had some great vacation. Like, cause I would have spent 40,000 on some European vacation, maybe. Right. So, and cause we did the best with the tools we had at that time. And now we're doing the best with the tools we have now, which are a little better because now I know more. And that's all we can do at that point. But when you can get through your head that there are no bad choices and that nothing is a failure, this is all just a learning and growth to get you to where you want to go. That's really to me, the key of it all, right?
Because the woulda, coulda, shoulda is because people, it's just a waste of time. I mean, the woulda, coulda, shoulda is I spend way too much time with clients doing the woulda, coulda, shoulda. Like it's not going to help you.
Nothing helpful.
I have some clients who they want to spend way too much time talking about like some choice they made in middle school. I'm like, we can't keep talking about this. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry, but we've processed this enough. Like, it's over. Like, you've got to let it go. You were 12. Like, you gotta forgive yourself.
Give your 12-year-old self a break.
Because we all make decisions that aren't the best. And I don't even want to say that we regret, because we can all sit here and go back to various choices and track them down, but you can see all the good things in your life and go, okay, but if you hadn't made those choices, how did we end up here with these good people?
Right.
There's lots of good in our lives too. So what are you going to do? Like, what if you had made a different choice? Maybe this person wouldn't end up in your life. You want to spend an hour talking about that too? Like, we can get in the weeds about that too. So I have some rules to decisions, which is there are no good and bad decisions, just the decisions that we make. Don't woulda, coulda, shoulda yourself. Like, just accept choices and move forward and just keep moving forward. But and a choice, it's better to just make a choice than not make a choice at all. You want control in your life. We all want control. So making choices for yourself is the way in which you have control. So do that. So make a choice.
That's great. And that's a skill.
Yeah.
The more choices you make, the better you get at them.
Yes.
And,
the more you understand about yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh, I love it. What a great conversation. Yes. I know you're all very excited and want to know how you can reach Tess or learn more about Tess. So what are the best ways for people to get to know you?
Yes. So you can learn all about me on my website, tessbrigham.com. So you can find my book on my website, tessbrigham.com, or you can go on Amazon.
Yep.
I'm there as well. And on my website, there's the book. I have some ebooks as well. If you are a parent of a 20-something, I have a book on there called True You Parenting, or This Makes True You makes a great book for your recent college graduate, if you're a college graduate. I also have a companion course called True You, which is a course that I put together that is connected to the book, but it really gets into all of the research that I've done over the years. I've spent the last 15 plus years working with young adults. So I have all of that on my website. If you want to work with me directly, you can find that on my website. So it's all on my website.
There it is.
As well. Yes. And also, if I can give a quick plug, my sister and I, we do a podcast ourselves. I have a podcast with my sister. It's called Psych Legal Pop. So if you love popular culture, so my sister's an attorney, talking about attorneys.
Yeah.
So my sister's an attorney. I'm a therapist. We talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. It's every Tuesday and Thursday where you find podcasts. So
what's it called?
Psych Legal Pop.
Good.
Every Tuesday, Thursday. So check it
I
out
love
if
it.
you
And
if you
I
enjoy
wrote
that.
down to ask you about that. And then,
Yes,
so
yes.
that's good.
We're super excited about, we're having lots of fun. So,
It's great. No, it's really, it's all the fun things that,
yes.
yeah. 90 Day Fiance and
And we talk a
Wives,
lot about
all
Sister
kinds of-
Wives. If you're a big Sister Wives person, we're talking about like the Anna Nicole documentary. We're talking about the Bama Rush. You're not you don't watch a lot of TV, so you probably,
I don't personally, but I love what she
Yeah.
does. So, you'd have fun with like a lawyer
Yes.
and a therapist.
Yeah, we're talking about the
these things.
Kardashians. So if you like all that kind of stuff, come check us out.
Yeah, I love it. All right. And I'll link to all that on the show notes page on the website, abbymedcalf.com, for this episode. And that's it. Thank you so much, Tess.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. I really appreciate it.